well, we'll just make it crooked. Why? Why is it typed crooked? Well, we needed to fill that empty space on both sides of her head. I know that's what they were thinking. And the couch, well, the couch just happened to be in the studio. And, hey, your dress is kind of like the couch, so stand on the couch, and I don't know. So that reminds me of a story working as a designer for a newspaper. And we got a new editor, this woman came in, and she didn't come back and talk to me for a whole month. Like, this is a huge story, but there's, I don't know if all newspapers are like this, but there was a huge division between the people that wrote the paper and the people that designed the paper. It was like this giant wall. It was just ridiculous, but it was there. So, this woman comes in with all these preconceived notions, probably, because she's only talked to the writers, the editors, about, the graphics department and how horribly uncooperative we must be, or we are. So and this is the editor, so she doesn't come back and say anything to me for a whole month. Like, what does that say about a person supposed to manage a business, that they can't rise above, opinions that they've heard or whatever's in their head, and just say hello to their employees no matter what they're going to turn out to be like? It's just ridiculous. So, and I'm just a kid, and I'm really nervous about the whole thing, and I make the effort to schedule a meeting with her and go in and show her my portfolio so I can form some kind of rapport with her. So she sits down with my book and she flips through it, flip, 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 and she points at a few things. And one thing I remember pointing at is like, it's a typeface I used. And she says, in the business we call this art type. And I just looked at her. And she goes, I don't see much of that here. I just paused and said, we've got a Xerox machine that enlarges or reduces press type that I have access to. What? No, that's what I wanted to say. What the fuck do you expect me to do other than to make the press type that I have available larger or smaller? Do you want me to hand draw all, See, I'm going off now on a rant, and this is, it should be for another video. So I may have to stick it in another video. Well then, in that case, let me finish it. I'm just going to go ahead and finish the story, as it's been eaten at me, right? So that's what I had to deal with. I had to deal with people that had expectations of, what I should have been inside the department, and false expectations of what the department was like and what the people were working like, as if we were the enemy, rather than all working for the same company. And we had to deal with this small-minded behavior. It was just impossible. So later on, I finally realized that corporate was telling me, we want quality. And they would point out like newspapers, like big newspapers with big staff, right? And we want pages that look like this. And I'm like, well, I wanted to do that, right? So it was this quality issue. But then years later, I realized that they didn't give a flying fuck about quality. All they wanted was production. But they didn't want to ask for that. They implied it in many ways that went right over my head because I was a naive kid. But that's all they wanted. And I know, remember they held up this one designer with some esteem, and I would look at what he was doing. I'm like, man, he's just cranking this shit out. I don't understand it. What I didn't realize is that is exactly what they wanted, but they just never directly came out and said it. There were no directives, so there was no actual managing. It was just like this, a machine that you kind of like squirt oil into, and you're not sure where the lube points are, how to keep it running, and it rattles, and it just keeps going on until it just falls apart. Which is exactly what happened. There was no clear thinking. I understand. I have a tendency to excuse things, but I'm not going to excuse the people that work in management and their petty egos and stupidities and how they manipulated the news without any concern for ethics, And people think that people that work in the media have a certain amount of ethics. Well, no, they're just people like everybody else who have agendas, and they're going to push their agenda any way they can. They're going to manipulate the news any way they can. So always take whatever you see with a grain of salt. Only believe about 10% of it. Because it's so easy to manipulate, with the written newspapers. I mean, I can go into what they do. Okay, well, why not? I'm just going to continue to let the camera run. I'm just going to go ahead and talk about this, right? story placement. If you don't want people to pay attention to a story, you put it, at the bottom of the page or on the inside. That's one subtle way to manipulate news. The size of the headlines. The bigger the headline, the more importance you assign to whatever happens to be in the newspaper. Use of drama words, I'm just going to use that term, is horrible in television news. It's just past the point of no return. You're watching just opinion. No matter where you turn to, it's all opinion. And it's mainly opinion because you have to look hard at it and look at the words that they use. Like anything that is like an adjective to describe something that happened, that's a personal opinion. Like it was a huge fire. Well, no, you shouldn't describe something like that. You should describe it with like a photograph. Or, the building is this size and this is how big the fire is. It's your opinion it's a huge fire. But what's a huge fire? The sun maybe is a huge fire. It's the way it's presented. And then it was so bad. Oh, timing. Timing is another issue. Like when you run a story. For instance, there was an airport that the county wanted to build, which is fairly close to me, okay? A reliever airport. And the money in town was pushing this airport. And I did a map to show where the airport was because there was going to be a meeting because people were organizing against it. There turned out to be quite a big grassroots effort against this airport. And there was going to be a city meeting that allowed the public to come in to voice their opinion. Well, they held the map, which I had done a week before, until the day before they ran the story about announcing that there was going to be a public meeting. To give people no chance or less of a chance to go to this meeting to voice their opinions. And why they do that? Because certain folks at the newspaper were tied up with the folks in town that wanted the airport, So can you say that it's ethical behavior? Or should they run a story a week ahead and favor the readership, the public, which is supposedly what they're supposed to be, all about? Just saying. That's another good story. Manipulation of photographs. So they would send a photographer out to take a photograph, and the photographer would bring back a photograph of what's there. And they would say, well, we can't use that because it doesn't illustrate the story. Well, the idea in their head and the story that they've wrote is different than what's actually there. And they want the photographer to create a photograph that pushes whatever agenda they're pushing at the time, rather than what's there. So, and that happened time and time and time again. Like we ran this feature where we would try to help people, and we would go take photographs of these people in need, and then people would, see this and feel sorry for them and give money. So we shot this photograph of these people that live in a government-subsidized home, standing in front of a television set with cable and a VCR with a stack of tapes rented from Blockbuster. And they wouldn't run it because, well, that doesn't show that these people are poor. Well, I'm sorry. That's what's there. There are a lot of instances like that. It's just incredible. It's just incredible. Or an editor who hates guns, right? There's another great one. An editor that hates guns that sits in front of her circle of middle management and says, well, I don't understand why anyone would need a gun. Well, that's not your place to say that and to, lead your flock, your middle management flock down the path in the paper to print anti-gun stories because of this is your viewpoint. No, your viewpoint is supposed to be balanced. Fair and balanced? Well, it's not. It's not. So what I'm saying is it's never fair and balanced. And maybe drama news is better because, if you're bright enough, at least you know where these people, the slant these people are coming from, and you can take it with a grain of salt. And maybe that's the best thing. Maybe I shouldn't complain about it and just say, hey, this is a good thing, because at least there's less faking.